Practicing Christians might want to enjoy their lamb chops while they're still on the menu. It's not because some organic chemists may develop a synthetic lamb that can be roasted and enjoyed almost as much as real lamb today, but because we may, if some Bible scholars are correct, be approaching a time with the establishment of God's kingdom when Christ returns, when lamb is no longer on the menu. And perhaps no bacon, no salmon, no sirloin, turkey, or rabbit curry. At least we have the consolation that we all got started this way, without meat, I mean, and got along quite well without it. God announced to humanity that he had created all the plants on earth for our nourishment. That's Genesis 1:29. These, of course, were useful for our other needs as well. For example, papyrus for paper, bamboo for huts, pine for fire, oak and walnut for dishes and furniture, cotton for clothing, and so on. But the animal kingdom, small and large, was to be off limits to his human creatures. For some goodly length of time, this worked well. Much later, when Noah had dried out, God also allowed us to consume land animals, insects, birds, fish, sea mammals, and crustaceans without restriction. Only later did God say, as part of his covenant arrangements for his people Israel, who had not yet been brought into being, no pork chops, lobster, or shrimp. Oh, no camel burgers either. And no rabbit stew. There were different issues involved here. God did, however, also long before his covenant with Israel, at the same time he allowed Noah to eat meat, require all people to drain the blood from any animals eaten. That's in Genesis 9:4. Most practicing Christians seem to have their fingers in their ears on this one, yet Jehovah's Witnesses follow this command. Many Christians say we have no obligation to obey the ritual commands, the holiness code, only the moral code. But God's directive requiring the draining of blood of all animals we eat not only precedes that holiness code, but may indeed be part of the moral code. And what will come next in God's world is a bit difficult to predict exactly. Quote, "The wolf and the lamb shall feed together. The lion shall eat straw like the ox. They shall not hurt or destroy on all my holy mountain." Close quote. The holy mountain is Mount Zion, where Jerusalem is built. And that's from Isaiah 65:25. We're told animals' eating habits will change. Why not ours? Yet earlier, Isaiah wrote, "On this mountain the Lord of hosts will make for all peoples a feast of rich food, a feast of well-aged wines, of rich food filled with marrow, of well-aged wine strained clear." That's in Isaiah 25:6. Will that marrow be the product of the synthetic food industry? We're told that on the new earth, quote, "death will be no more. Mourning and crying and pain will be no more, for the first things have passed away." Close quote. That's Revelation 21:4. To many, this doesn't seem to be limited to humans, but will include their pets and other animals. To the degree that hunting animals involves their fear, suffering, or death, it wouldn't fit with the biblical description of the new earth, where not only people but also animals live in peace and harmony, as we note in the first verse in this paragraph. Will our eating habits change, and that of the animals change as well? Christian writer Randy Alcorn writes, "So on the new earth, we may consume a wonderful array of fruits and vegetables, perhaps supplemented by a sort of meat that doesn't require death, something that tastes better but isn't animal flesh. If the product of the curse and death can taste good to fallen taste buds, how much better will God's specially designed foods smell and taste to resurrected senses? And that's the end of the quote from him. Always remember, the Lord will provide. That's Genesis 22, 13b and 14. Most practicing Christians don't often link their present food preferences to their future edibles in God's resurrected kingdom. That's easy to understand. Almost no church ever writes or speaks on this, and there's only partial evidence to inform us. But those who do give some thought to this often come out on the side of going with God's original gifts to us. Quote, every plant that is yielding seed that is on the face of the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit, you shall have them for food. Genesis 29:1. And in God's original plan, this is all the animals could eat too. See that in Genesis 29:2. Additionally, he gave us brains for making new things from his gifts. First, he helped us figure out that some of the things we produce, either from the plants of the ground, like sugar, white flour, Crisco, booze, and French fries, are really not very helpful to us. Just as some of the things we produce from these new animal gifts, like beef and beef fat and fried pork rinds, aren't very useful either. Our brains also told us how to turn carnivorous foxes into vegetarian foxes. It's being done frequently now. And if it can happen with foxes, meat eaters, well, how about those lions? We've also learned that some basically good stuff, like wheat and corn, can cause and has caused problems. Research has shown that early farmers, and many more recent ones up to the modern era, live shorter, more crippled and diseased lives because they may have had only wheat to eat. They'd given up the diverse diets of their hunter-gatherer forebears, which protected them for stable and staple crops. Their rulers were clever enough, or at least wealthy enough, to add those other foods back into their ruling class menus. Those who had the wealth to get someone to peel me a grape were taller and stronger. So in the resurrection kingdom, it seems we will eat as Jesus demonstrated in his resurrection. We can see that in Luke 24:42, Acts 10:40-41. At that time yet to come, in the new Jerusalem, perhaps we'll not eat animals, but one might hope for chocolate and cheese and wine and pomegranates and such. At a very minimum, the fruits of the tree of life, Revelation 22:14. And some practicing Christians want to live their lives now as if they were already in the kingdom. Thus you have seen some being vegetarian or vegan, which works as long as you add vitamin B12, cobalamin, to your diet. These are men and women who want to get themselves on the road to paradise now, as if their king was already here. But for now, God seems okay in the Bible with hunting, as long as you consume it and don't discard the body of the animal. This we can see in the book of Proverbs. The lazy do not hang and dress their game, while the diligent obtain fine rewards. Proverbs 2:27 may not be familiar to all of us, but it is in the hearts of many practicing Christian hunters. Serve then, be the king's right arm,